I stared at the creature on the other side of the fire, eating the mango. This creature was, of course, different in many ways. Well, it was different indeed. I've never seen anything like it. The creature had a gray coat with a dark blue mane and tail, with another shade of blue that was just 2 layers lighter than the other one. It had orange irises with a slit running down the front of it. It had a tattoo on its flank. The tattoo, it was a moon with dust surrounding it. And the other one, which I just noticed creeping up and began eating the mango as well, was different in many ways. This one had a violet mane and tail, and a gray coat, of course. However, at first I thought it was violet, but on second glance I quickly captured that only one shade of it was black, and the other shade was white, and their coat was gray, and their tattoo on their flank was a dawn with lightning bolts striking out of it. It was rather odd, but I dare not question it. Who knows? It could serve its own purpose. I stared at them and said, You two are some interesting creatures, I'll tell you that. I said. However, I wasn't expecting a response. They both looked up and said, I guess you could say we are. And thank you. And thank you for feeding us, sir. We haven't eaten in a few days. And of course at this, my eyes went wide behind my goggles. I didn't have my headscarf off. No, I still had it on. I said, you can talk? Of course we can. Haven't you seen... Well, you probably haven't seen bat ponies before, but haven't you seen ponies? I shook my head no. To this, I was rather surprised. I looked at them. Judging from the way they were growing, they weren't exactly, well, kids. I later found out that there was fillies in cults, but they weren't exactly fillies, nor were they adults. They were in their teenage years. I stared at them and said, well, So what's your names? She smiled and said, well, my name is Moondust, and this right here is my sister, Lightning Dawn. I stared at them and said, huh. And why do you guys have a tattoo? They looked confused. After a little bit of elaboration, I found out that apparently the thing on their flank was a cutie mark. If I was with a group of people, they'd wonder how I knew what a flank was. Well, I used to be in culinary school, and that was a part of an animal. It was naturally the backside of an animal. like a horse or a cow. It was a piece of meat called the flank. Luckily, I already knew what to call it. That way I wouldn't be given a weird look if I said ass or something. I stared at them saying, "Where's your parents?" They looked rather down, ears folding to their head, and they had said, "We'd rather not talk about that, if it's okay with you, sir." Of course, I did not push it. I didn't want to push something that was uncomfortable for them. I'd been traveling for rather a good 3 days, eating scraps of food I found, surviving. I didn't want to push away my new, well, guest. It just felt nice to have something or some pony to talk to. I stared at them and said, "So, what's your special talents?" "Oh, well, we'll talk about that later." They told me that their talents were different. Each one had different unique talents. They didn't want to discuss it, but I decided to push a little bit further. "Come on, it can't be that bad. What is it? If you tell me what your talent is, I'll tell you what my talents are." They smiled and said, "The first one to speak up was Lightning Dawn." "Well, my special talent is if I can fly into a cloud, I can absorb the lightning, and I could use it to certain extents. I'm still training myself to be able to use it more efficiently, but I can have it transfer into my body and manipulate it to move wherever I please." I nod my head, thinking that's a pretty useful talent, to be honest. I can think of a lot of things that that'd be useful for. I stare at Moondust. She says, "Before I share my talent, you need to share yours." I stop and I smile, saying, "Well, my talent is charisma, being diplomatic, stuff like that. Survival definitely is one of them. I've had to do a lot of stuff, scrounge and push my way up and down these past few days. Not a lot of people could see very many things. But I've had to do a great deal of things in order to adapt to your current surrounding. My special talent is I basically adapt to almost any surrounding if I put enough brain power to it. That's my special talent." When I took a second glance at Lightning Dawn, I noticed her irises were red, whilst Moondust's was orange. I didn't really question it. So, Moon, mind telling me what your talent is now? Well, I can make very special plants grow in the moon's light. Plants that wouldn't normally have a certain effect, I can add many effects onto them. And I'm also well connected to many of the nighttime creatures that roam. I stared and said, that's a very useful talent. Both of you are pretty unique. Eventually they began very slowly trotting up to me, or walking, whatever. As they made their way to me, they sat down on both sides, and I said, do you two just eat mangoes? Well, we can eat many things, mangoes being one of the assortments. I decided to throw out a question that I immediately had, out of curiosity, of course. So, do you drink blood? They stared and said, well, we're not vampire ponies. I know you're not vampire ponies. I know that much right now. Actually, now that I look at them a little closer, I've noticed that they weren't actually teens. They were full-grown adults. I decided not to question it. Well, if you're not vampire ponies, then can you still, drink up blood for nourishment? They sighed and said, well, of course we can, but it's not the main want or need. Sure, it brings us great power, but we don't really, well, it's not really her main, how do you say? I look at them and decide to say it for them. It's not your first choice, or doesn't really kick into your instinct. Yeah, that. We're bat ponies. Bat ponies are different from vampire ponies. I nod my head and say, I understand. Well, look. What are you two doing in here anyway? I mean, I understand you're bat ponies and this is a cave, but what are you two doing in here anyway? Well, seems like a rather tough question for them, so I don't push as they tell me they don't feel comfortable with it. I sit there with my machete, still sharpening it. They look at me and ask me, what's the tool or thing I'm holding? I look at them and say, it's a machete. Or if you don't know what that is, it's a blade. It's very sharp. I start explaining to them in depth about what a machete is and what it's used for. I explain that I've been traveling, so I've had to use it to do of many tasks. Whether it be from cutting leaves, and whether it be to cut bushes or vines out of my way, to just kind of defense means. It makes you feel more comfortable. They look at me and they say, we've only found this cave a few days ago. We're still very tired. Why might that be? We've been trying to nestle it to be our new home, but it's not exactly going in our plan. There's many things wrong with this cave, so we might just have to move. I look at them and say, you're more than welcome to travel with me if you want. They look up at me with bright eyes. The little slits in their eyes opening more, making them look more adorable. You really mean it? Of course I do. I'm not going to lie about something. They start jumping up and down, spewing thank yous. Eventually, I get tired. I go into my tent, and of course they follow in. They stare at the sleeping bag. They go over and snuggle into it before I can get in. I look at them and they both look way too fucking adorable. They say, what's your name, by the way? They say in unison, it's Cameron. You do get your rest. It's going to be a long day tomorrow.